This is Tony Mark
This is Russell Grether.
of the Mark and Grether Group, and welcome to the Malibu Podcast. All right. Welcome to the Malibu Podcast. I'm Tony Mark with Justin Cumby and our friend and guest today, Doug Burdge, a legendary local architect. And normally we start off every podcast by having our guests introduce themselves. So if you don't mind, Doug, introduce Doug.
All right, we'll take it from here. I'm Doug Burdge, actually California, born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, and went to architecture school at the USC, University of California. Graduated back in 1981. And been coming to Malibu for years, living in the valley, and then actually had the pleasure of moving here after my wife and I were married back in, it was close to 1988. And so we been living here for a while and been practicing architecture now for over 35 years. My uncle's an architect, my cousin's an architect, and I'd worked for my uncle down in Orange County for a number of years and done a bunch of traveling. Was working on bigger projects with them. They were doing institutional type work. I always kind of knew that maybe because of my personality and just be able to work with people to have my own company. And so I started my own company in also 1988, the year we got married, and been busy ever since. And just pleasure working, in a town. You can actually have a job somewhere, but then you can actually be in a town where you're actually raising your family and kids. Our kids were raised in Malibu, went to elementary school, went to church here, soccer games, and it was just a wonderful place to live. So to work in a great place, be part of a community, was really a goal that we wanted to do. So we're kind of there now, and now we split our time between Malibu and our home up in Sun Valley, Idaho.
That's a good introduction. In my mind, certainly, and I think probably in anybody's mind that knows Malibu and architecture, you were definitely at the tip top of the scale for local Malibu architects, and your style and designs have become synonymous with class and high-end homes. When you design a home, was this a style, you kind of have created a look that people would see as your style and look now in large part. Is that something that you developed over the years that evolved, or is that something that you were always drawn to?
Well, it's interesting when you talk about style. I mean, you might associate a lot of architecture, so when you look at a house and say, there's other architects, whether, the other local architects like Ed Niles or other people, that you say, okay, well, that's an Ed Niles home because it's super modern, or it's got a lot of steel, or it's a cutting edge type of thing. What I've always done, and actually it's just been something that I don't know if it's easy for me, but I mean, I've been able to do all styles of architecture. And I say that.
I was going to regret saying that.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying it's interesting. Like it's like and when I was doing Spanish hacienda work, a lot of times I went down to Mexico and had an office down there in Cabo San Lucas. And I was down there for 10 years, and then I became known as a hacienda architect, and there's books published and things. I said, do I want to just be that? Mm-hmm. Then we also do traditional type homes because people still want to have traditional type homes, whether it be Southern brick colonial type of project in Pacific Palisades or something that's appropriate for the neighborhood. And then getting into modern homes. And I remember our very first modern home that we did, which was in Malibu. We had a great client, and he disbelieved in us, and it was the one we did on Birdview, the Birdview Modern. And to me, that to the day, I think it's one of my proudest projects that we did. So since then, it's really just looking at a style. I say any good architecture, and I tell people this, is like if it's a combination of the best proportions and materials. You look at a great building, or whether it be in the Hamptons or whether it be in somewhere around our country, and you say, well, that's just a good looking house or a good looking building. And I said that because they got the proportions and the materials right. So I maybe been blessed, so I'm able to work with a lot of different styles, and which maybe allows me to work with more clients. But if they want something, say, hey, go for it. You, Doug, show me what you think is appropriate here. then that's a luxury too, to have that as an opportunity. And so we're doing that more. And so the more that you build, I guess you say practicing when you're building projects. And then so the more that we're practicing, we're able to kind of hone that. And even after 35 years, to do more. I mean, I'm excited to not do the same as I did before and actually explore. There's so many great new materials out there to be able to put into buildings now, and techniques and things. So I love it, you know. So that part, it gets you up every day and keeps you excited.
People ask me a lot as a real estate agent, you know, what's your favorite style of home? And I've come to realize something similar to what you just said, which is I think all different styles can be amazing if they're done well. You know, it really, the style that I tend to be in love with in the moment is whatever people are doing the best in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I love your clean lines and the kind of the designs you've become more known for these last few years. You've done a lot of homes for some friends of mine, and the spaces are fantastic.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I pride myself in is the actual layout, and that's why I love to sometimes go into an older home that we remodel, and I have this vision that I could just say, well, okay, we can just, it looks to me it's easier. It's like, oh, we'll open up these 3 walls and you're gonna amazing, you're gonna have this space, and we'll do a little more height over here, or you start something from scratch to be able to talk that spatial. So the laying out that layout and that flow and understanding between, you get up in the morning, you go to bed at night, what are you doing and how are you using the space and how are you using the house, or if you have a family, you know, where are the kids supposed to be at a certain period of time and what are they doing? How are you entertaining and how are you there without entertaining? Is it just the two of you? What does the house feel like? So the flow is super important. And then the style kind of comes to it. And that's what I always said, that, you know, we all been to modern homes and they feel like, okay, they're colder, right? Because maybe it's just the use of material. So I'll say, well, how do we warm that up? You know, to make sure that you can have big walls for art, but maybe just changing materials. So there's sort of a concrete floor, you do a wood floor, or making sure they're wood cabinets versus just a laminate cabinet, to bring that warmth in, because that still can be modern, but it's understanding between the warmth and the cool on the materials. So it's just something that it's just something I guess I'm blessed to have that creation, to be able to create that for clients.
And you know, you mentioned earlier that you were excited about, you know, using new materials and different building processes. Could you tell us a little bit about sort of where you're going and where maybe architecture and construction might be going?
Yeah, I mean, for a while there, it seemed like the industry was kind of stagnant, and you know, you are relying on, you know, certain materials. There's basic building materials, there's framing materials, wood and steel and things like that. But you know, even today, it used to be when a lot of these composite materials and porcelain finishes were coming out, people, oh my God, I'm not going to use that. If you're trying to make something look like stone, but in a lot of cases, it just makes sense because it's lighter weight. You can still have that quality material versus pure materials. The other big thing, and again, we'll talk about this possibly later, is just that, you know, being in Malibu, we have to be conscious of our climate, our environment. So, you know, we are in a high fire zone area. Okay, so what materials you use, you cannot sit back and just assume this is going to be fine using XYZ materials that maybe they had used when they came from a previous location. So even though it may not be required from a client, I'm kind of like insisting on it. So before it was more worried about like coastal adapted, best of coastal adapted material when we do our beach houses, you know, something that doesn't rust or doesn't have maintenance and constant maintenance. You know, so there was that, but then now with our prevalence of fires, we have to be really conscious. I mean, after the Malibu fires, even more so, it's kind of like, okay. So there was actually a change in understanding, and then at the same time, other communities were having similar, you know, fire-related issue in wildfire areas, and so they were able to come up with different materials that now are available for us architects to use in our palette of materials that we would grab from. So that really helps.
And you have you wound up helping out some of my friends doing fire rebuilds. I think the fact that you not only consider yourself to be an architect in this community, but a citizen of the community,
Mm-hmm.
I know you went above and beyond for a lot of people to help them be able to rebuild, because budgets didn't, you know, necessarily line up with insurance settlements.
Sure.
So I know you did a lot, and you did a lot for some of my friends. how was that process, trying to deal with such a massive need to rebuild Malibu after the fire?
Well, I think I even go back to some of our recent, what's going on in other states right now and some of these other disasters. And the best stories you hear are just, you can't rely on the government, so it's like you have to rely on your neighbors. And then certain neighbors have certain abilities that they'll just step forward and they'll be able to help out. So you help out first by, if you're just naturally maybe a leader and you can take charge, and my upbringing, helped by being in scouting and doing other disciplines that I did, to be able to think about, okay, we got to help people first. And then we did do the whole movement with the Rebuild situation. Rebuild Malibu was a big thing. And I knew that what our codes were set up before with the city were archaic. The last bigger fire prior to Woolsey Fire was the 1993 La Costa fire, which I actually lived in that neighborhood in La Costa. And so, but I knew that if we had to apply the current codes, nothing would ever get done. So we immediately worked with a couple other Malibu architects to immediately go into the city and says, guys, we have to change this system. You can't have this 2-3 year rebuilding process, even though it is still long. But it is expedited. And even if you hear about Malibu and say, gosh, only so many homes have been rebuilt, I said, I'm comparing that to other counties and cities in Oakland and other areas that had rebuild issues up in Napa. And we actually are rebuilding faster than those neighborhoods, even though it looks like we're not really building that fast. So it was just something that I just did, or being here for the fire, but also knowing that I have the ability, because I'm in the business professional, that I could go to the city and says, we have to change the way that these neighbors got to rebuild and not make it arduous and difficult. It's enough that everything's been taken away from them. We have to figure out a way to make it so the burden is going to be less, and so there are less things to worry about. They got to worry about their family, they got to worry about, where they're getting their next paycheck and other things that they never had to worry about before. Everything was gone. So our job was really to make that process so they had one less thing to worry about, and hopefully, my passion in helping people out was able to make that work, which it did. And we still have, even today, 5-6 years later, some jobs are under construction now, all different styles, and we're excited to get some of those things built.
And was, when we walked through your parking lot, you've got some different, pods and prefab homes and things out there. Almost looks like you have them set up as kind of a display.
Mm-hmm.
Did some of that come out of the Woolsey fire and a need for structures more quickly, or had you already been working on those concepts?
Well, actually, we were working a little bit. It does. It's that's even another industry. You say on the prefab home industry. Prefab homes have been actually around for a while. So there are a number of prefab home manufacturers that immediately came to our office and were presenting to us saying, hey, we can build back better, quicker, build back quicker, and maybe not lose the quality. So there was a company, especially like Plant Prefab is a big company there in Rialto, and they specialize in not just a basic, like you say, just it looked like a trailer came on your property, but they hired only custom home architects who design their designs. And so they kept a high design level, and then they kept the quality, and that's actually a very successful company. And then there's another company, Bevy Homes, this is in Santa Paula, and they're a smaller company, but they rebuilt a lot of homes. So you could figure out a way, like give that as an option. Like if you want to rebuild, you came into my office, said, what are our options? We had one of our ex-planning commissioners ask me, they were an older couple, say, well, we want to build a shipping container home. I go, you want to build what? And so, we figured out a way to do that. It's like, well, is this going to be maybe quicker, or maybe it's going to be more fire safe? And so we investigated everything. And yes, so we have that, the Bud unit, which is a combination of Burdge design and working with Sunset Magazine on that one, and then the Boo House unit that we did, which is usually high-end shipping container homes that we've created. So it did kind of spawn out of that, but we were kind of toying with it a little bit before the fire.
And have the budgets, I looked into it a little bit for myself at one point. The budgets were better, but they weren't quite, there wasn't as much of a difference as I thought there would be in sort of the, because the permitting process essentially it was the same, the fees were essentially the same. The construction costs were lower. Have you seen that gap widen now as construction costs have gone up, or are they still?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, if you want to have a nice kitchen and sub-zero refrigerators, nice cabinets and counters, whether you build it for a custom home or you put it into a prefab, it's the same price as the kitchen. And then what happens is that the labor, because it can build in a factory and they don't have to worry about the weather, and you're able to build something quicker. So the whole goal of a prefab project is that, and we finished another big job up in Sun Valley, Idaho, is that while you're doing your site work and you're putting your utilities in the ground and building your foundations and things, this box or your home is being built in this factory. Okay, so it's all being put in with the plumbing and the finishes and whatever. So let's say that 3 or 4 months is done on the site. These things roll up and they're prefab sections, and they're able to be put together. So it's not like you have to wait to start that house that's being built in the factory after you built this stuff on the site. So it can be done concurrently. So you finish your site and then you put the house on. So what you're doing, it may be the same cost in the end, but what is the cost of time?
Yeah.
Okay, so if a typical home project is a year and a half, 2 years to build typical construction, and if I can take that time period and break it in half, then I'm all of a sudden moved back into my home. It may have cost me the same amount of money, but then I picked up a year.
Yeah.
You know, so in that case, time is money.
Yeah, and you don't think about the other costs of living really when you.
Well, you don't have to rent.
You don't have
You're
to rent.
not
all
renting.
those costs.
I mean, you can get back in your kids, because the people that have actually moved out, unfortunately, they've been displaced, and they had to go rent. They maybe had to go over the hill, and they're probably not coming back to Malibu. They picked different schools. They had to. The commute was different. So it did change the community. It was over 800 properties that got just vanished in a period of a day. And listen, it's happening all around our country now, and it's terrible. And so it's just trying to figure out, building again, you can't build the same way. I mean, even if you talk about hurricanes in these areas, they got to figure it out. Like, can we build something that doesn't just fly away like the next time, or in this case, burn down the next time?
Right.
So us as architects, we're kind of committed. We have to make that as an industry that has to change. It's like, this is not going to go away. Our the climate situation and calamities and things, so we have to build a better system and design better systems so things last.
And would you say that was
Sure.
Would you say that's a fairly large part of the problem of why so much burned in Malibu? If it was built to more of the ideas and concepts and codes you're talking about now, could more of those homes have withstood the fire rolling through?
I think it's less even the home, because what people we get asked this all the time. It's these communities were just overgrown too. I mean, most of it was the fact that you had timber so close to your home. Nowadays, it's just that you can't have a tree next to your home. You can't have wood chips that are surrounding your home on the ground, even though it was just something you bought at the hardware store. This deck that was right off of your house is made out of wood timber that maybe you just built afterwards on the weekend. But those were kindling. Those kindling started a fire. They started the bigger fire. The homes that actually were protected, and you wonder why, well, how did that home stay and that home didn't? And it really had to do with the more of the landscape and what's on the ground around it, as embers are kind of flurling around everywhere. That was really part of it. So yes, there's an eave, and did an ember get into the crawl space or underneath? Yes, and that can fester, that can cause the fire to actually happen later. But that's why now I tell homeowners, it says you don't have to change your home, but just take your offsite management and just do that now, okay? And literally 5 feet around your home, that one thing is huge, because nothing's festering and nothing's kindling is not close to something that's a bigger thing that can bust. So don't have anything planted around your house. Just put gravel around 5 feet. Just do it now, right? So it's like, that's not expensive, but it's actually a good deterrent.
That's a good thought.
Yeah, it's just, there's certain things that you can do versus the bigger picture. Yes, when we're rebuilding, there are materials that yes, it's harder to get embers into something, and thinking about how that happens, the doors and windows, your openings, and then not allowing that to fester. So that's how you actually handle it. But that fire was just so hot. It was over 3,000 degrees. I mean, steel melted, and
Yeah,
cars melted
yeah.
down to an inch above the ground. I mean, it's you couldn't believe it. So it's like nothing can sustain that when you're in that temperature craziness. It was crazy.
So you got to try to prevent that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So that's all you can do. I mean, you're not depending on the fire department's not there to go save your house unless there's a occupant or someone is in a dangerous situation. They're not. The fire department's not paid to go save your house. That's not what they're for in a wildfire situation. So don't depend on that.
So you had just mentioned, how long it takes to construct an average home, and you were instrumental, obviously, in helping fast track some of the permitting processes for fire rebuilding, which we're all grateful for. Without getting you in trouble, are there ideas and concepts that you have thought about trying to help work through with the city that might help us move the permitting process forward as a community?
Yeah, so, that process was great at the city because we did work together more. We kind of went behind their doors. A lot of cities and governments think that they have enough people, like, we don't need your advice kind of thing. And what we try to do in a small town is like the local professionals, you really do have to bring them in. And so what we are working with now is like in Malibu, like Mary Ann's one of our city council members, and she's got a background because she was in the city planning and building department. So of all people now, she's understanding is like, how do we make, our system so it's not so, why is it so long, and why is this really helping out everybody? And so because we're in it all the time and we're always challenging the rules, we want to share those with the city. It says, why are you asking for triple stamps, and you're taking weeks and weeks and weeks? Is that maybe they don't really want to trust in anybody, but we still have to know in society that once we get a permit for something, that's all you can actually do. There's only so much policing and so much oversight that you can actually put on somebody. I don't care what the business is. So we're just trying to have that understanding. At the same time, we have as part of our community doesn't want anything new and nothing rebuilt, but that doesn't exist either. We still got to make productive change and good change, but it shouldn't take forever. And you're losing good people. The people you're trying to protect. There's a lot of people moving into Malibu now, and I actually said this in front of the city council the month after the fire. I got up before the city council and I said, if you guys don't change your methods, this is going to be Malibu to Monaco in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I mean that by all of a sudden you're going to have a town that's just for super wealthy people. Nobody's going to school here because you've created this place where it's just only the uber wealthy can afford. And in some ways Malibu is becoming that. And we look at the schools and we look at other things, and we're building new high schools and things. And you don't want to lose the families, but is I don't know how it's affordable anymore. So there's that financial part of our town that we have to be serious about, because we lost a lot of the classic families that were living here, and they were affected by the fires, and they just took the insurance money and they're gone, and the people that bought their houses are different set of people. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but it's I warn the city, is just don't make the process so hard so your grandmother or the person that's lived here for a long time, they shouldn't have to wait 3 years to quote unquote remodel their mailbox. It does not need to be this hard.
And would you see there being any changes in the future just in the construction industry itself that would enable the cost of construction to come back down again?
Well, it is based on competitiveness. I tell people that prior to the Malibu fires, there was a good select of maybe 10 great builders in Malibu that people would kind of use, and they were Malibu residents, and they lived here. They were our neighbors, really great builders, and everyone kind of had that group to pick from, and that was a certain group. Now all of a sudden after the fires, there's like 30 new builders, or over 50, and we have a number of jobs under construction right now. We have over 30 jobs under construction, so we're working with probably 20 different builders, and so it's that competitiveness of knowing that you not necessarily going to get the job, so the prices might go down that way. Unfortunately, after COVID and everything else, shipping and hard to ship stuff, did raise prices. Or prices right now where we could quote $400 to $500 a foot, or now $800 to $1,000 a foot, and these are just like, are you serious? Like, that's what's gonna cost to build my house? I mean, it's unbelievable. Okay, so you ask how it goes down, inflation didn't help, you know, the cost of living, but the regulations in California still make it very hard for a contractor to make a profit, even though you think that they're making a lot of money, you know, because of the regulations they put on workers' comp and other things, and insurance also is tough. So I wish it can go down, and so what we do with our builders is when we finish a job, we'll analyze and says, how could we have saved money, you know, and they'll always go, well, you know, the change orders and somebody changed their mind and increased stuff, which is okay, but how do they, with the labor, because materials are one thing, and so the labor costs are just so much. So we are still actively, not just finishing a job and just walking away, we're still trying to go back and talk to the contractors and figure out how do we present to clients where we can make some cost saving, value engineering decisions. And that's how you really save the money, is look at it and maybe make smarter decisions working with the builder beforehand. And that's how you save the money. Don't just typically bid it out. Find a contractor, interview them, hire them, bring them, make them part of the team early, and then you actually save your money that way. I mean, you can save 20% if you work with a contractor. Don't wait in the end to hire them. That's how you save money.
That's good advice. At the office meeting this morning, I was late, so I missed most of your presentation, but was told that you broke down the different categories of permits. You know, could you give us a quick breakdown on what the different ways people are approaching permitting are and kind of the timelines involved?
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny because they say, hey, what's an over-the-counter permit? You know, can I go under the city and get over-the-counter for anything? You know, can I change my faucet, you know, on the street or something? You know, what's quick? We tell people, we have a job that we're doing in Point Dume right now, and it was a lot of square footage, so we didn't need any more square footage. It was a house from the 80s, and so we had enough size. And the client decided, okay, we need to figure out what's a quick permit. So we worked with a local interior designer, and we said, okay, the quickest permit, even on a big house, this is like 15,000 feet, including a basement, big square footage. We were able to get this permit in a construction permit in less than 5 months, okay? And how did you do that? Okay, well, it's called a max 5% permit. What that means is that all the windows and doors that you got around your house, you can only create more than 5% new openings, okay? So if you got 1,000 feet, you know, so obviously if that's the amount of openings that you have and you take 10% of that, you know, that's 50 feet, and then so half of that is 25 feet, so you can have 25 feet more openings, okay? So if you keep under that, and then you don't change your septic system, you're not changing the height of your roof, you're not saying it's using the same site work, you're not changing the drainage, you just get that quick permit. But what you do is then you might want a pool or change your pool. Or you might want to maybe build a pool cabana or something later. Don't tie that into your first permit because it doesn't allow you to start construction. Get the first permit, get underway, and then the pool permit is being processed while you're building, and when they're ready to build the pool, they've got the pool permit. But you didn't hold up the initial permit. So you're phasing your project. And the other important thing is, like we talked about this morning at the meeting, is that we go on a job and we look at the house and we say, okay, what is worth that's grandfathered here? We look at beach houses most of the time and said, well, you're never going to be able to build it this close to the bluff or this part of the beach. So we say, well, we have to keep that. I love that view. It's like great. So that's the 50% remodel, maxed out project. It's allowed. Coastal Commission allows it. Malibu allows it. It may take longer to build. It may be expensive that we had to dance around these old conditions of an older home built in the 20s and the 30s. But in the end of the day, that house could never be built at that location if it wasn't a remodel. So that may take
50% of the home can be
removed, but you gotta leave the 50% up, doors and windows and clay heights, and then you know where the ceiling hits the wall. And so that is something where we've done. The house on Birdview that we did, it was well located, well on top of the bluff. It had to be 50 feet back, and we didn't call it a remodel. He spent a lot more money to do it, but in the end, his house is at the same location all new finishes, all new everything, and that take 2 years to get a permit. Your beachfront houses, they take a couple years, or you have to go to the coastal commission is a coastal appeal zone, and you have to deal with state agencies, FEMA, other agencies. When you're next to a waterway, next to Ponsel, there's creeks, there's waterways, it just adds more time onto your permitting process. So I say, buy a flat lot in Malibu West, and maybe, there's a house there. And if a house was there before, as ugly as it may be, buy the lot with a house on it.
It's real value.
It's value. You pick up years in permitting time.
And so you, I don't know, I guess, what's it been the last 10 years, you've kind of started moving some of your time to Idaho and Wyoming. And how did you get started heading into those areas, and what's it like working there?
Well, it's actually been within just the last 5 years, but we've been going there just as a family, since I was been in college. Even, for the last, 40 years. And so
those are just areas.
Yeah, it's just looking at it and visiting, being a skier and loving nature and a hiker and stuff like that. And then my kids are very nature oriented, even though they went to school here. We always knew that maybe we'd end up in a place like that, but what you're doing is it's a great dichotomy, because my office is thriving down here in Malibu. I'm also licensed in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, and so we're working there. We do work in Texas, so it's just, to me, it's kind of interesting. So you're comparing mountain type architecture in detailing snow loads, dealing with freezing temperatures, dealing with frost zones and things like that. Then I have the Malibu issues to work out here. I don't know, we're just kind of having fun doing both. And I kind of sometimes learn from different materials that I might be using in a mountain style home, and then now bring it back down to Malibu. We're toying with another home right now where it's kind of a mountain modern home design, but we're putting it in Malibu, because Malibu can kind of accept all styles. So we're kind of doing that, a little crossover.
And do you find I think you mentioned that the permitting process for a lot of those is a lot different up there?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a red state, blue state thing, but it's crazy. It's just like I can get a permit in a month or two, in Idaho. It's like people go, a month or two. It takes me a month or two even to just get them to call me back. You put an application to Malibu and they call you back in a month. It says, well, no, I got a permit in a month. It's just maybe because it's less red tape and jurisdictional. It's the same professional, same quality of construction. It's just interesting, and it's just that you just, if you can take off the bureaucracy on something, it's enough that you have to hire a professional. I'm licensed. I'm responsible for making sure your home doesn't fall down in a storm or whatever. So all professionals are around the country, around the world. So if the jurisdiction is just trusting more in the professionals and not thinking that they gotta overlook them in every sense of the way, it's crazy. So. It's refreshing too, because boom, we're starting construction faster.
Are you seeing those communities you're working in? You mentioned Malibu, and the concern that Malibu as a community could kind of lose some of its core culture just being driven out by the price increases. Are you feeling or seeing that in those communities as well that you're working in?
In our other communities, like out of state?
Yeah, out of state.
Well, no, people, what happens is that typically these places are typically thought of as like where you would have a second home. But now these communities, these small towns around America where you have ski resorts and different places, they're now first home. And so they're actually creating really good schools in these places, knowing that people now want to raise their families. People's jobs now can be remote. People can still fly into their law firm in San Francisco or Denver or whatever, knowing that their family's being raised. I'm working with 2 contractors here in Malibu that they're raising their family in Sun Valley. And they're contractors. You think a contractor has to be, but they worked it out with their partner, like I'm away for a week, I'm here for a week, but their kids are living in an environment with more open space, and there's camping trips every weekend, and it seems like the crime is less, and it's just a way of life. It is simpler and easier, less stressful. So that is what's really happening, is that these second home communities are becoming first home communities, and their quality of life is incredible. And you can fly every day, catch an airplane, and be here in 2 hours. So it's no big deal.
Seemed like COVID did do us all that favor.
Yeah, it did. If the one thing came out of COVID, yes, it was a lot of people very close. We had a very close contractor of ours pass away. That was Juan Sanchez, amazing man, amazing family man, and he was one of our top contractors here, and he passed away within a week of getting afflicted. And so a lot of great people, amazing people were lost, but I guess you could say one silver lining was the fact that people could move and live other places. They weren't stuck maybe in that big city.
Yeah, definitely. It was a paradigm shift in terms of what life could look like.
Yeah. Very interesting how that all happened.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've answered the questions I had brought in. Is there anything else you'd like to note while we got you here? And
yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that, people ask me a lot. It's like, okay, I'm, been doing this for 35 years, and it's, we're typically doing like, whether it's 10 great projects a year, and you'd say, okay, well, that's like, 10, 35, that's 350 projects. Some years you're doing 20 projects, so it's like, it's more. But to me, I call it a passion profession. I said that if you can find anybody, what they do in life, whether they're a dancer, whether they're a singer, a music maker, a movie maker, in our case, an architect, it's like, whatever that passion is, I mean, that's what gets you up in the morning, gets you excited. I mean, hopefully that excitement actually equates into when you meet people and it translates back to your work. So I've always looked at it as that it's just been something that I've been blessed with, to be able to have that passion in my work and to be able now to see it blossom. And then now it's like there's more things to do. And people ask me, oh, are you going to retire sometime soon? I go, I think I'm going to retire. I'm probably going to expire. So it's not like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore.
yeah.
But in the meantime, it's like, okay, where are the new challenges? I'm working with my brother, Dave, now, who lives up in Idaho, and we're doing developments, and we're in these new communities that feel like California back in the 60s and 70s, where there's people now moving into new communities. So now I can be more responsible and be part of creating like a startup community or something, and not just do the one building in the neighborhood. And so there's exciting times ahead. I think it's just like I said to you, it's like any business that you go into, whether you're in the real estate, brokerage business, or whatever, just find something you love to do and you won't work a day in your life. It's kind of like that. That's the motto.
It's a good motto. Well, thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast. I have always appreciated you, and just the fact that you're much more than just a businessman in this community. You're part of the fabric of the community, and appreciate a lot of the good things that maybe don't get seen or known. But because I'm a realtor and I interact with so many people, more recently with the Woolsey fire, but throughout the time I've known you, there's a lot of good deeds that you do for our community, and I'm grateful for you. So thank you for being here and the impact you have.
Thank you. Let's keep doing things together.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Wall had my first beer here in Malibu. Malibu.